My name is Juliana, and I'm 35 years old. Being a single mum to my 12-year-old daughter Sophia has been my greatest joy despite the challenges we've faced. My ex-mother-in-law Margaret never approved of me, but I never imagined she could be dangerous. When work forced me to leave Sophia with her for 2 weeks, I felt uneasy but hopeful. Then came that terrifying phone call on the third night that changed everything. Before I tell you about the call that turned our lives upside down, let me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you've ever had to deal with toxic family relationships. I met Daniel at County General Hospital, where I worked as a nurse in the emergency department. He was the new resident doctor who caught everyone's attention with his confident smile and gentle bedside manner. I still remember the first time we spoke. He needed help with a difficult patient, and somehow, between the chaos of the ER and the late-night coffee breaks, we fell in love. It was a whirlwind romance. After just 6 months of dating, Daniel proposed, and I said yes without hesitation. We were young in love and ready to start our lives together. The wedding was small but beautiful, just close friends and family. That's when I first met Margaret, Daniel's mother. From the moment Margaret laid eyes on me, I could feel her disapproval. She was tall, elegant, with perfectly styled silver hair, and the kind of posture that made you feel like you were always slouching. During our first meeting, she looked me up and down, taking in my simple dress and modest jewelry. Daniel always had unique taste, she said with a tight smile. I'm sure you're very nice, dear. That was just the beginning. Throughout the engagement and wedding planning, Margaret made subtle comments about my background. I came from a working-class family in a small town. My father was a mechanic, my mother a schoolteacher. In Margaret's eyes, I wasn't good enough for her son, the doctor, from a long line of successful professionals. I just want Daniel to have the life he deserves, she would say often within my earshot. Someone who understands our family traditions and values. Daniel always defended me, but never strongly enough to truly silence his mother. He was caught between his love for me and his lifelong desire to please Margaret. It was a dynamic I didn't fully understand until years later. Despite Margaret's disapproval, we married and moved into a small house close to the hospital. The first year was blissful. We worked hard, saved money, and talked about starting a family. When I found out I was pregnant with Sophia, Daniel was ecstatic. He spun me around our tiny kitchen, tears in his eyes, promising to be the best father in the world. Margaret's reaction was less enthusiastic. Well, I suppose grandchildren were inevitable, she said when we announced the news. Let's hope the child inherits the good genes. The pregnancy was difficult. I had severe morning sickness for months and was eventually put on bed rest for the final 6 weeks. Daniel tried to be supportive, but his residency hours were brutal. Margaret offered to help by coming over 3 times a week to check on me. These visits quickly became opportunities for her to criticize everything from our home decor to my pregnancy diet. She brought pregnancy books and highlighted sections about what not to eat, left pamphlets about private schools on our coffee table, and constantly reminded me how she had worked until the day before giving birth to Daniel. Women these days make such a fuss about pregnancy, she'd say, while I was fighting nausea. In my day, we just got on with it. When Sophia was born, it was the happiest day of my life. She was perfect. 7 pounds, 4 ounces with Daniel's dark hair and my green eyes. Margaret arrived at the hospital with a designer baby outfit and immediately asked to hold her. She looks just like Daniel did, she cooed, completely ignoring any resemblance to me. She's got the Hamilton nose, definitely. The first few years with Sophia were a beautiful chaos of midnight feedings, first smiles, first steps, and countless discoveries. I cut back my hours at the hospital to spend more time with her, while Daniel's career continued to advance. Margaret visited regularly, always bringing expensive gifts, and always finding ways to undermine my parenting choices. If I was breastfeeding, she would mention studies about formula. If I used cloth diapers, she would bring boxes of disposables. When Sophia started solid foods, Margaret criticized my homemade baby food as unnecessarily time-consuming and brought jars of organic store-bought options. As Sophia grew, she showed an incredible sensitivity to the world around her. By age 3, she could name all her colors and count to 20. By 5, she was reading simple books and showing remarkable artistic talent. Her drawings were advanced for her age, full of detail and imagination. I was so proud of her. Margaret acknowledged Sophia's intelligence, but often in ways that felt like backhanded compliments. She must have gotten her brains from Daniel's side, she would say. The Hamiltons have always been academically gifted. Daniel and I started having problems when Sophia was around 6. His hours at the hospital were longer than ever, and when he was home he was distant. I suspected he was unhappy, but couldn't get him to talk about it. Margaret, however, had plenty to say. Daniel works so hard to provide for you both, she told me during one of her visits. The least you could do is make sure the house is perfect when he gets home. That's what I always did for Daniel's father. The cracks in our marriage widened over the next 2 years. We argued more frequently, usually about small things that masked bigger issues. Daniel missed Sophia's school events because of work. I felt increasingly alone in parenting our daughter. Then came the day I discovered the truth. Daniel had been having an affair with Hannah, a pharmaceutical rep who visited the hospital regularly. I found text messages on his phone while he was in the shower. Intimate conversations that had been going on for months. I confronted him that night after Sophia went to bed. He didn't deny it. Instead, he told me he hadn't been happy for years. Hannah understands the pressures of my job, he said, as if that explained everything. She doesn't make me feel guilty about working late or missing dinner. The divorce process was brutal. Margaret rallied behind her son, painting me as a neglectful wife who had driven Daniel away. She told family friends that I had been cold and unloving, more focused on Sophia than on my husband. The truth was twisted until I barely recognized my own marriage in the stories being told. The custody battle was what broke my heart the most. Daniel initially sought full custody, claiming his more flexible schedule as an attending physician would provide more stability than my nursing shifts. It wasn't true. I had specifically arranged my schedule to be home when Sophia wasn't in school. But Margaret backed his claims with offers to help care for Sophia whenever needed. After months of legal battles and thousands in attorney fees, we reached a settlement. I received primary physical custody with Daniel having Sophia every other weekend and 1 evening per week. It wasn't the arrangement I had feared, but it still felt like losing a piece of my heart every time Sophia packed her overnight bag to stay with her father. The 4 years after the divorce were about rebuilding. I focused on my career, eventually becoming the nursing director of the emergency department. Sophia adjusted to the new normal, though she sometimes came home from her father's house, quiet and withdrawn. She never complained, but I could tell that spending time with Margaret was difficult for her. Grandma says my drawings are messy, she told me once after a weekend visit. She says I should focus more on my math if I want to be smart like Daddy. I tried to maintain a cordial relationship with Daniel for Sophia's sake, but our interactions were strained. Margaret made no such effort. At school events or medical appointments, where we all had to be present, she would speak to Daniel as if I wasn't there, or make pointed comments about broken homes and children needing stability. Despite these challenges, Sophia thrived. Her artistic abilities continued to develop, and her teachers praised her creativity and empathy. She made close friends and joined the school art club. I was so proud of her resilience. Then came the opportunity that would change everything. The hospital selected me to represent our emergency department at an international medical conference in Seattle. It was a 2-week program that could open doors for my career, potentially leading to a position in hospital administration. The timing couldn't have been worse. The conference fell during summer break when Sophia would be out of school. Daniel was planning a cruise with Hannah, whom he had married the previous year. My parents lived across the country and were dealing with my father's recent hip surgery. My usual babysitters weren't available for such an extended period. After exhausting all other options, I made the difficult call to Margaret. Despite our history, she was Sophia's grandmother, and I hoped she would be willing to help. "So you want to abandon your daughter for 2 weeks for a career opportunity," Margaret said after I explained the situation. How typical. I swallowed my pride. "It's an important conference, Margaret. And Sophia would enjoy spending time with you." There was a long pause before she replied, "Well, I suppose I can't let my granddaughter be shuffled off to strangers. Daniel would never forgive me. I'll do it, but only because it's what's best for Sophia." I knew it wouldn't be easy, but I had no other choice. I accepted her conditional offer, hoping that 2 weeks would pass quickly and without incident. How wrong I was. The day I drove Sophia to Margaret's house, my stomach was in knots. Margaret lived in an exclusive subdivision on the outskirts of the city, a sprawling colonial with perfectly manicured gardens and a circular driveway. It was beautiful but intimidating, much like Margaret herself. "Remember to be polite and help Grandma with chores," I told Sophia as we pulled up to the house. "Call me every night before bed, okay? And if you need anything at all, I'm just a phone call away." Sophia nodded, clutching her backpack. Inside were her sketch pads and coloured pencils, her most treasured possessions. I'll be okay, Mum. It's just 2 weeks. Margaret greeted us at the door wearing an immaculate cream-coloured dress, despite it being a casual Sunday afternoon. She hugged Sophia stiffly and gave me a tight smile. I've prepared the guest room, she said, leading us inside. I hope you've packed appropriate clothes, Sophia. We may attend some events with friends from my garden club. The house was just as I remembered. Elegant, pristine, and cold. Crystal vases held perfect flower arrangements. White carpets showed no signs of dirt or wear. Family photos lined the mantel, but I noticed they were all of Daniel through the years, with a few recent additions of Daniel and Hannah. There were no pictures of Sophia. Margaret showed us to the guest room, which had been prepared with military precision. The bed was made with hospital corners, and a printed schedule was taped to the desk. I believe in structure, Margaret explained, pointing to the schedule. Breakfast at 7 a.m. sharp, reading time from 9 to 11, lunch at noon, afternoon activities as noted, dinner at 6 p.m, all electronics off by 8 p.m. for proper sleep hygiene. I glanced at Sophia, who was taking it all in with wide eyes. This was nothing like our home, where art supplies often covered the dining table and weekend mornings meant pancakes and pajamas until noon. Margaret Sophia is on summer break, I said gently. She should have some time to relax and draw. That's her passion. Margaret's lips thinned. There will be time for hobbies after educational activities are complete. I won't have her wasting 2 weeks on doodling. I wanted to argue, but reminded myself it was only for 2 weeks. Causing conflict now would only make things harder for Sophia. After helping Sophia unpack, it was time for me to leave. I hugged her tightly, inhaling the familiar scent of her strawberry shampoo. I love you so much, I whispered. I'll call tonight and we'll video chat every day. Love you too, Mum, she whispered back, and I felt her hold on just a little longer than usual. As I drove away, I looked in my rearview mirror and saw Sophia standing in the doorway, suddenly looking much younger than her 12 years. It took everything in me not to turn the car around. The first night our video call went well. Sophia was in good spirits, telling me that Margaret had made pot roast for dinner and allowed her an hour of drawing time after completing a summer reading assignment. The bed is really comfortable, she said, panning her phone to show me the guest room. And Grandma has fast internet. That's great, sweetheart. How's everything else? Fine. Grandma has a lot of rules, but she said she's taking me to the art museum on Wednesday if I finish all my reading. I was relieved. Maybe I had worried for nothing. Margaret might be strict and cold with me, but surely she loved her granddaughter. The second day's call was similar. Sophia had spent the morning reading classics that Margaret deemed appropriate, followed by a math workbook that Margaret had purchased to keep her sharp for the next school year. In the afternoon, they had gone grocery shopping and prepared dinner together. Grandma says my knife skills need work, Sophia told me with a small laugh, but she liked the salad I made. By the third day, however, I noticed subtle changes. Sophia seemed more subdued on our call, answering my questions with shorter responses. When I asked about her day, she hesitated. It was okay. Grandma had some friends over for tea. I had to wear that dress you packed for special occasions. Did you get to draw today? I asked. Another pause. Not really. Grandma says I need to focus on practical skills. She had me practicing piano all afternoon. Mum, I don't even play piano. I frowned. Did you tell her that? Yeah, but she said all Hamilton women learn piano. It was really hard and my fingers hurt. After our call ended, I texted Margaret gently suggesting that Sophia be allowed some time for her artwork. The response was curt. I'm giving her a well-rounded experience. Drawing will not prepare her for the real world. I tried to push down my frustration. Just 11 more days, I told myself. We can get through this. That night I couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I was considering calling Sophia again when my phone rang just after midnight. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello, I answered immediately, alert. Mum? Sophia's voice was barely a whisper, trembling with fear. Sophia, what's wrong? Where are you calling from? Mrs. Parker's phone next door. Mum, you have to come home. Grandma's really mad at me. She says I stole money from her purse, but I didn't. I swear. My heart raced. Slow down, honey. Tell me exactly what happened. Between soft sobs, Sophia explained that Margaret had been checking her room while she was in the bathroom. When Sophia returned, Margaret was holding her purse, claiming that $50 was missing. She had accused Sophia immediately, saying no one else had been in the house. She went through all my stuff, Mum. She dumped out my backpack and checked all my pockets. Then she said she found the money in my jacket, but I didn't put it there. I never took her money. I believe you, I said firmly. Where is Grandma now? In her room, she took my phone and said I'm grounded for the rest of the visit. She said she's going to tell Dad that I'm a thief. I snuck out to Mrs. Parker's house to use her phone. Mum, I'm scared to go back. Listen carefully, Sophia. Go back to the house so Grandma doesn't worry, but stay in your room with the door locked if possible. I'm changing my flight right now. I'll be home tomorrow. Please hurry, she whispered, and the fear in her voice broke my heart. As soon as we hung up, I booked the first available flight home, paying an exorbitant fee to change my ticket. I packed in a frenzy, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I tried calling Margaret's house, but no one answered. I then called Daniel, but his phone went straight to voicemail. He was probably at sea with limited reception. I barely slept that night, counting the hours until my early morning flight. Just before boarding, I tried Margaret's number again. Still no answer. I called Mrs. Parker, the neighbour Sophia had mentioned, and asked her to check on my daughter. I'll keep an eye out, she promised. Sophia seemed awful upset when she came over last night. Is everything okay? I'm not sure, I admitted. If you see or hear anything concerning, please call me or the police if necessary. The 5-hour flight was the longest of my life. Every minute felt like an hour as my mind conjured increasingly terrible scenarios. I knew Margaret was controlling and cold, but would she actually harm Sophia? I didn't want to believe it. But the fear in my daughter's voice had been real. As soon as we landed, I turned on my phone to find 3 missed calls from Mrs. Parker. My hands shook as I called her back. Juliana, thank God. You need to get here right away. Mrs. Parker's voice was urgent. There was shouting from Margaret's house early this morning. Sophia tried to come over again, but Margaret came after her. She looked terrified and Margaret was furious. I offered to let Sophia stay with me, but Margaret wouldn't allow it. She practically dragged the poor girl back inside. My blood ran cold. Have you heard anything since? It got quiet for a while then. About an hour ago, there was more yelling. I was about to call the police when my husband said we shouldn't interfere in family matters. But I'm worried, Juliana. This doesn't seem right. I'm on my way. If you hear anything else, please call the police immediately. I grabbed the first taxi I saw outside the airport, giving the driver Margaret's address and begging him to hurry. The normally 40-minute drive from the airport to her suburb felt interminable. I kept trying Margaret's number and got no response. Just as we turned onto Margaret Street, my phone rang. It was Mrs. Parker again. Juliana, the police are here, she said, her voice shaking. You need to get to Memorial Hospital, now. Hospital? What happened? Is Sophia okay? I don't know all the details. There was a lot of commotion. An ambulance came. My husband went over and saw Sophia being taken out on a stretcher. She was conscious but bleeding from her head. Margaret was being questioned by the police. The world seemed to stop spinning. Tell the driver to go to Memorial Hospital instead. I told Mrs. Parker, then relayed the change of destination to the taxi driver. What happened? He asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. My daughter is hurt, I managed to say before breaking down in tears. I burst through the emergency room doors, frantically scanning for information. The irony wasn't lost on me. I worked in an ER just like this one, but now I was the panicked parent desperately seeking news about my child. My daughter was brought in by ambulance. I told the receptionist, my voice cracking. Sophia Hamilton, she's 12. The woman typed on her computer. She's being treated in Trauma Room 3. Let me get someone to take you back. A nurse I didn't recognize led me through the double doors into the treatment area. The sounds and smells were achingly familiar. Beeping monitors, antiseptic, the controlled chaos of medical professionals working to save lives. But this time it was my daughter in one of those rooms. Dr. Patel met me at the door of Trauma Room 3. He had kind eyes above his surgical mask, but they couldn't hide his concern. Ms. Hamilton, I'm Dr. Patel, the attending physician treating your daughter. How is she? Can I see her? You can see her in just a moment. She's stable now. Sophia suffered a concussion and a laceration to her scalp that required 12 stitches. We've done a CT scan that shows no skull fracture or brain bleeding, which is very good news. I closed my eyes briefly in relief. What happened to her? Dr. Patel hesitated. From what we understand, she was struck with a baseball bat. The police are investigating. She's been asking for you. A baseball bat. The words echoed in my mind as rage and horror washed over me. I pushed past Dr. Patel into the room. Sophia lay on the hospital bed looking impossibly small amid the medical equipment. Her face was pale and a large white bandage covered part of her head. An IV line ran into her arm and monitors tracked her vital signs. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. Mum, she cried, reaching for me. I rushed to her side, carefully gathering her in my arms. "I'm here, baby. I'm here now. You're safe." She clung to me, sobbing against my shoulder. "She hit me, Mom. Grandma hit me with Daddy's baseball bat. She said I stole her money, but I didn't. I swear I didn't." "I know, sweetheart. I believe you," I whispered, stroking her back. What happened exactly? Between tears, Sophia told me the full story. After our phone call the night before, she had returned to Margaret's house as I instructed. Margaret was waiting for her, furious that she had left the house without permission. She confiscated Mrs. Parker's phone and sent Sophia to bed without dinner, calling her a deceitful little thief, just like her mother. The next morning, Margaret continued her accusations. She emptied Sophia's suitcase again, searching for more stolen items. When Sophia continued to deny taking the money, Margaret became increasingly agitated. She kept saying I was lying, that I was ungrateful and sneaky. Sophia said, her voice small. She said she found the money in my jacket pocket, but I never put it there. "Mum, I wouldn't steal." When Sophia tried to call me again using the house phone, Margaret yanked her away by her hair, pulling so hard that Sophia screamed. Sophia ran for the front door, hoping to reach Mrs. Parker's house again, but Margaret caught her in the foyer. She grabbed my hair and pulled me back inside. Sophia continued, her voice shaking. Then she pushed me and I fell. I hit my knee really hard on the floor. Cornered and terrified, Sophia had tried to run upstairs, but Margaret blocked her path. That's when Margaret went to the display cabinet in the living room and took out Daniel's old baseball bat, a high school trophy he had left at his mother's house. She swung it at me. Sophia whispered, her eyes wide with the memory. I tried to duck, but it hit my head. There was blood everywhere and I felt really dizzy. I think I screamed really loud. Mrs. Parker must have heard the scream because she called the police. Her husband James ran over to check on the commotion and found Sophia bleeding on the floor while Margaret stood over her with the bat still in her hand. As Sophia finished her story, a police officer appeared in the doorway. She introduced herself as Officer Rivera and asked if she could speak with us about what happened. "Can it wait?" I asked, still holding my trembling daughter. "She's been through so much." "I understand, but it's important we get a statement while the details are fresh," Officer Rivera said gently. "We have Mrs. Hamilton in custody, but we need to know exactly what happened." I looked down at Sophia. "Are you up for talking to the officer, sweetheart? I'll be right here with you." Sophia nodded bravely, and over the next half hour she recounted the entire story again. Officer Rivera took notes and asked clarifying questions, her expression professional, but I could see the concern in her eyes as Sophia described the attack. "Is my grandma going to jail?" Sophia asked when she finished. Officer Rivera glanced at me before answering. "She's at the police station right now. What happens next depends on a lot of things, but you don't need to worry about that. Your job is to rest and get better." After Officer Rivera left, promising to be in touch soon, Dr. Patel returned to check on Sophia. He explained that they wanted to keep her overnight for observation, standard procedure with concussions. "Her physical injuries will heal relatively quickly," he told me quietly as Sophia dozed off exhausted from the ordeal. "But the emotional trauma may take much longer. I'd recommend speaking with our pediatric psychologist when she's ready." I nodded, unable to form words past the lump in my throat. How could this have happened? How could I have left my child with someone capable of such violence, just as I was drowning in guilt? The hospital room door opened again. Daniel stood there, his face ashen, still wearing vacation clothes, khaki shorts and a wrinkled Hawaiian shirt. "I got off the ship as soon as I could," he said, his voice hoarse. "The cruise line arranged a helicopter to the mainland. What happened? Is she okay?" I stood up, anger suddenly replacing my guilt. "Your mother happened, Daniel. She accused Sophia of stealing money, then attacked her with your old baseball bat when she denied it. She could have killed our daughter." Daniel stared at me, then at Sophia's sleeping form. "That's impossible. My mother would never—" "There must be some misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I hissed, keeping my voice low to avoid waking Sophia. "Our daughter has 12 stitches in her head and a concussion. Your mother is in police custody. What exactly do you think is being misunderstood here?" He ran his hands through his hair, looking lost. "Mom has always been strict, but she's not violent. She loves Sophia. Does this look like love to you?" I gestured to our injured child. "Sophia didn't steal anything. Your mother planted that money to have an excuse to punish her. She's been mentally abusing her since she arrived, and now it's escalated to physical violence." Daniel shook his head slowly. "There has to be an explanation. Maybe Mom was having a bad day or Sophia did something to provoke her." That was the final straw. I stepped closer to him, my voice deadly quiet. Listen carefully, Daniel. If you try to defend what your mother did or blame our daughter in any way, you will lose any right to call yourself her father. Sophia needs support and protection right now, not excuses for her abuser. Something in my face must have shown him how serious I was, because he took a step back looking shaken. You're right, he said finally. I'm sorry. This is just... it's a shock. Imagine how shocked Sophia was when her grandmother came at her with a bat, I replied coldly. Before Daniel could respond, Sophia stirred and opened her eyes. When she saw her father, she reached for him weakly. Daddy, she murmured. You're back. Daniel moved to her side, taking her small hand in his. I'm here, Princess. I came as soon as I heard. Grandma hurt me, Sophia said simply, her eyes filling with tears again. She called me awful names and hit me. Why would she do that, Daddy? I watched as Daniel's face crumpled. Whatever denial he had been clinging to couldn't survive his daughter's direct question. I don't know, sweetheart, he said, his voice breaking, but it was wrong and she'll never hurt you again. I promise. As Sophia drifted back to sleep, Daniel and I stepped into the hallway to talk. The shock had worn off and now he looked devastated. I need to know everything, he said. From the beginning, I told him about the conference, about asking Margaret to watch Sophia when no other options were available. I described the rigid schedule, the criticism, the escalating control that culminated in the false accusation of theft. The neighbour's husband saw everything, I finished. He found Sophia bleeding on the floor while your mother stood over her with the bat. There are witnesses, Daniel. This isn't a misunderstanding or an accident. Daniel leaned against the wall, looking physically ill. I knew Mom was strict with me growing up, sometimes harsh. But this? I never thought she would. Would what physically attack her granddaughter, because that's exactly what she did. He was quiet for a long moment. What happens now? Now I talk to a lawyer and file for a restraining order. Your mother will never be alone with Sophia again. In fact, she won't be anywhere near her if I have anything to say about it. I'll support whatever you think is best for Sophia, Daniel said, and for once I believed him. As we returned to Sophia's room, I realized this was just the beginning of a long and difficult journey. The physical wounds would heal, but the emotional scars might last a lifetime. One thing was certain, I would do everything in my power to protect my daughter and hold Margaret accountable for what she had done. The days following Sophia's attack were a blur of hospital visits, police interviews, and meetings with lawyers. Sophia was released from the hospital the next day, but the psychological impact lingered. She had nightmares about Margaret coming after her with the bat waking up screaming and drenched in sweat. During the day, she jumped at loud noises and kept close to me at all times. I took a leave of absence from work to be with her around the clock. My boss was incredibly understanding when I explained the situation, immediately approving paid family leave and connecting me with the hospital's employee assistance program for counselling services. 3 days after the attack, I met with Jessica Turner, a lawyer specialising in family law and domestic violence cases. She came highly recommended by a colleague who had gone through a similar situation with an abusive family member. What happened to Sophia is absolutely horrific, Jessica said after I recounted the events. The good news, if we can call anything in this situation good, is that the case against Margaret is strong. There are witnesses, medical evidence, and Sophia's testimony. What about the fact that she's her grandmother will that complicate things? Jessica shook her head firmly. Family relationship is irrelevant when it comes to assault on a minor. In fact, it can make the charges more severe due to the position of trust. Based on what you've told me, we're looking at assault with a deadly weapon, child endangerment, and possibly attempted murder. The phrase attempted murder made my stomach lurch. It was one thing to know Margaret had hurt Sophia, another entirely to frame it in those terms. But Jessica was right. The baseball bat could have killed my daughter if the blow had landed slightly differently. I want a restraining order immediately, I said, and I want to make sure she can never come near Sophia again, even if she somehow avoids jail time. We'll file for an emergency protective order today, Jessica assured me. As for the criminal charges, that's up to the district attorney's office, but I'll be working closely with them to make sure they understand the severity of what happened. Next came the task of gathering evidence. Jessica advised me to obtain the security camera footage from Margaret's home. Like many wealthy homeowners, Margaret had installed an extensive security system after a break-in in the neighbourhood several years earlier. Those cameras might have captured the entire incident. Daniel, to his credit, was fully cooperative. The shock of what his mother had done had shattered any remaining illusions he had about her. He contacted Margaret's security company and, as her next of kin, obtained the footage from the day of the attack. What we saw was worse than I had imagined. The high-definition cameras captured Margaret following Sophia around the house, checking behind her, constantly creating an atmosphere of suspicion. They showed her planting the $50 bill in Sophia's jacket pocket while Sophia was in the bathroom. Irrefutable proof that she had set up my daughter. The most disturbing footage came from the foyer camera. It showed Sophia trying to leave the house, Margaret grabbing her by the hair and yanking her back inside with such force that strands of Sophia's hair remained in her hand. It showed Margaret shoving Sophia to the ground, then retrieving the baseball bat from the display case. And it showed in horrifying clarity Margaret swinging the bat at Sophia's head with what the prosecutor would later call clear intent to cause serious bodily harm. Daniel watched the footage with me in Jessica's office. He didn't speak a word throughout the viewing, but by the end his face was streaked with tears. "I had no idea," he whispered when it was over. "All these years, was she always like this? Did I just not see it?" I didn't answer. What could I say? That yes, his mother had always been cruel and controlling, that the signs had been there all along. It wouldn't help anything now. The reaction from Margaret's side of the family was mixed and troubling. Some relatives immediately distanced themselves from her actions, expressing shock and sympathy for Sophia. Others, however, circled the wagons. Margaret's sister, Patricia, called me directly to suggest that there must be two sides to this story. "Sophia can be difficult," Patricia said, echoing Margaret's frequent criticism. Margaret was just trying to instill some discipline. "I'm sure things got out of hand, but pressing charges against family, that's going too far." I ended that call, quickly blocking Patricia's number afterward. The last thing Sophia needed was family members suggesting she had somehow deserved what happened to her. As news of the incident spread, it inevitably reached the local media. One morning, I opened my front door to find a reporter on my porch asking for comments about the baseball bat attack on your daughter. I closed the door without responding, but the damage was done. By that evening, the story was running on local news stations. "Prominent doctor's mother attacks granddaughter with bat," read the headline on the 6 o'clock news. The story included a sanitized version of events and a statement from the police confirming that Margaret Hamilton, 65, was in custody, facing multiple felony charges. The media attention added another layer of stress to an already impossible situation. Sophia was horrified that people at school might see the news. I contacted her principal immediately to explain what had happened and ask for support when she eventually returned to classes. "We'll make sure the teachers are aware and watchful for any bullying or unwanted attention," the principal assured me, "and our school counsellor is available whenever Sophia needs to talk." A week after the attack, we had our first appointment with Dr. Rachel Nelson, a child psychologist specialising in trauma. She had a warm office filled with art supplies, fidget toys, and comfortable seating. Sophia was reluctant to go at first, but agreed after I explained that Dr. Nelson could help with the nightmares. "I want to start by saying how brave you are, Sophia," Dr. Nelson said during our initial session. "What happened to you was very scary, and it's okay to have all kinds of feelings about it." Sophia sat close to me on the couch, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. "I keep thinking about it, even when I try not to." "That's very normal after something scary happens," Dr. Nelson explained. "Our brains try to make sense of it by going over the event again and again, but there are ways we can help your brain understand that you're safe now." Over the next hour, Dr. Nelson introduced Sophia to breathing exercises and grounding techniques to use when she felt anxious or scared. She also suggested that Sophia try expressing her feelings through art, which immediately perked up my daughter's interest. "Drawing helps me feel better sometimes," Sophia admitted. "Then that's something we'll definitely use in our sessions." Dr. Nelson smiled. "Art can be a powerful way to express things that are hard to put into words." As we were leaving, Dr. Nelson took me aside while Sophia waited in the reception area. "She's showing classic signs of post-traumatic stress, which is completely expected given what she experienced. But children are remarkably resilient with the right support. Keep doing what you're doing, being present, believing her, and maintaining routines as much as possible." That night, Sophia had another nightmare, but this time she tried the breathing exercises Dr. Nelson had taught her. It seemed to help a little. She also asked for her sketch pad and spent an hour drawing before going back to sleep. The next morning, she showed me what she'd drawn: a dark figure with an angry face, holding a bat standing over a small, frightened child. It was disturbing to see her trauma illustrated so clearly, but Dr. Nelson had explained that expressing these images could be part of the healing process. Maybe I can draw a different ending next time, Sophia said thoughtfully. One where I'm stronger, or where someone saves me sooner. I hugged her close, amazed by her resilience. That's a wonderful idea, sweetheart. While Sophia worked on her healing through therapy and art, the legal process moved forward. Margaret was formally charged with assault with a deadly weapon, child endangerment, and attempted battery of a minor. The evidence was overwhelming. The security footage witnessed statements from the neighbours, Sophia's medical records, and Margaret's own contradictory statements to police. Initially, Margaret claimed Sophia had attacked her first, forcing her to defend herself. When confronted with the video evidence showing her planting the money and initiating the violence, she changed her story, claiming she had been under extreme stress and temporarily lost control. The district attorney offered a plea deal. If Margaret pleaded guilty, they would recommend a sentence of 5 years in prison with eligibility for parole after serving half the time. Her lawyer pushed back, arguing for probation due to Margaret's age and lack of prior criminal record. Meanwhile, Daniel was struggling to come to terms with his mother's actions. After seeing the security footage, he cut off contact with her, refusing to take her calls from jail or provide funds for her legal defense. This led to another wave of family drama, with relatives pressuring him to stand by his mother in her time of need. Daniel called me one evening, sounding exhausted. Patricia called again. She says I'm abandoning Mum when she needs me most, that I'm choosing you over family. You're choosing our daughter over someone who tried to kill her, I corrected him. There's a difference. He was quiet for a moment. I keep thinking back to my childhood. There were incidents, things I dismissed or normalized. Mum had these rages sometimes. She broke things, slapped me once or twice when I was a teenager. I always told myself it was normal discipline, that she was just strict. It wasn't normal, Daniel. I know that now, he said softly, and I keep wondering, if I had acknowledged it sooner, maybe Sophia wouldn't have been hurt. I couldn't offer him absolution for that. Part of me did blame him for not seeing who his mother truly was, for allowing her access to our daughter despite years of red flags. But another part recognized that he too was Margaret's victim in many ways. All we can do now is protect Sophia going forward, I said finally, and make sure she knows none of this was her fault. As the weeks passed, we established a new normal. Sophia slowly began to recover, though certain triggers, loud noises, angry voices, even seeing baseball equipment, could still send her into a panic. She continued therapy twice a week and started keeping a journal of her thoughts and feelings. Her drawings evolved from dark, frightening scenes to images of strength and recovery. 2 months after the attack, an unexpected development shifted the course of the legal proceedings. Richard, Margaret's younger brother, whom I had met only a few times at family gatherings, contacted Jessica with information he wanted to share in Sophia's case. Margaret has a history of violence that the family has covered up for decades. Richard told us when we met at Jessica's office. She was physically abusive to me throughout our childhood. Our parents dismissed it as sibling rivalry, but it was far more than that. Richard showed us scars on his arms from where Margaret had burned him with cigarettes when he was 8. He described incidents of her pushing him downstairs, locking him in closets for hours, and threatening him with knives when their parents weren't home. I tried to tell my parents, but they didn't believe me. Margaret was the perfect daughter in their eyes. Straight A student, popular class president. They couldn't reconcile that image with what I was telling them, so they convinced themselves I was making it up for attention. The pattern continued into adulthood. Richard described Margaret's controlling behaviour with her husband Daniel's father and later with Daniel himself. She has this need to dominate and control the people around her. When they don't comply, she lashes out. "Why are you coming forward now?" I asked him. "You've kept this secret for decades." Richard looked down at his hands. When I heard what happened to Sophia, it was like history repeating itself. I couldn't stay silent knowing another child was suffering what I went through. Maybe if I'd spoken up sooner, Sophia would have been spared. I can't change that now, but I can help make sure Margaret is held accountable this time. Jessica immediately recognized the value of Richard's testimony. This establishes a pattern of behavior going back decades. It contradicts Margaret's claim that this was a one-time loss of control due to stress. With Richard's testimony and the mounting evidence against her, Margaret's lawyer approached the district attorney with a request to revisit the plea deal. Margaret would plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a sentence of 5 years with the possibility of parole after 3+ mandatory psychiatric treatment. The district attorney presented the deal to us, explaining that it would spare Sophia the trauma of testifying in court, while still ensuring Margaret faced significant consequences. "It's your decision," Jessica told me. "If you want to proceed to trial, we have a very strong case, but it would mean Sophia reliving the attack during testimony, potentially facing cross-examination, and enduring a much longer legal process." Oh, I discussed it with Sophia in an age-appropriate way with guidance from Dr. Nelson. "The important thing is that Grandma won't be able to hurt you again," I explained. "She'll be in jail for at least 3 years, and there will be a permanent restraining order preventing her from contacting you even after she's released." Sophia considered this carefully. "Will I have to talk about what happened in front of a lot of people if we don't take the deal?" "Yes, you would need to tell your story to the judge and jury. Grandma would be there too, and her lawyer would ask you questions." She shuddered slightly. "I don't want to see her again, and I don't want to talk about it in front of strangers." After consulting with Daniel, who supported whatever decision would cause Sophia the least additional trauma, I agreed to the plea deal. Margaret formally pleaded guilty the following week. The judge accepted the agreed-upon sentence, but added his own condition. Margaret would be required to wear an ankle monitor for 5 years following her release and maintain a distance of at least 1,000 feet from Sophia at all times. As Margaret was led from the courtroom in handcuffs, she looked back at Daniel with an expression of betrayal. He met her gaze steadily, but didn't approach her or speak. It was, I thought, his final break from her control. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. Daniel and I had agreed to make a brief statement emphasizing the importance of believing children when they report abuse and the need for accountability regardless of family relationships. "Today isn't about punishment," Daniel said, surprising me with his composure. "It's about protection, protecting Sophia and potentially other children from harm. Family ties don't excuse violence, and positions of trust make abuse even more devastating. We're grateful for the support we've received and ask for privacy as we focus on healing." As we walked away from the courthouse, Sophia between us, holding both our hands, I felt the first real sense of closure since the nightmare began. Margaret was being held accountable. Sophia was getting the help she needed, and our family, though forever changed, was finding its way forward. That evening, Sophia asked if she could start a new art project. "I want to make something beautiful instead of scary," she explained. "Maybe something that could help other kids who've been hurt by grown-ups." "That sounds wonderful," I told her, watching as she gathered her art supplies. "What are you thinking of creating?" She considered for a moment. "A book, I think, with drawings and words about how to be brave and how to heal, because I'm learning how to do that, and maybe I could help someone else learn too." Okay, I'll do gains. As I watched her begin sketching her face peaceful and focused for the first time in months, I knew that despite everything she had endured, my daughter would not be defined by this trauma. She would transform it, use it to grow stronger and to help others. And in that moment, I had never been prouder. In the year following Margaret's sentencing, our lives gradually transformed as we navigated the path to healing. The journey wasn't linear. There were setbacks and difficult days alongside moments of breakthrough and joy. But slowly, steadily, we rebuilt our sense of safety and trust. Sophia's physical wounds healed completely. The scar on her scalp was mostly hidden by her hair, though she occasionally wore it pulled back, saying, "It reminds me how strong I am." Her emotional recovery was more complex but equally remarkable in its progress. Dr. Nelson continued working with Sophia weekly, gradually decreasing to bi-weekly sessions as her symptoms improved. The nightmares became less frequent and the anxiety attacks diminished. Through art therapy, Sophia processed her trauma in ways that words alone couldn't achieve. True to her word, Sophia created an illustrated book titled "When Grown-Ups Hurt a Kid's Guide to Healing and Hope." With Dr. Nelson's guidance and my support, she filled it with simple drawings and straightforward advice for children who had experienced abuse from family members. The local children's hospital asked for copies to use with their young patients, and Sophia beamed with pride, knowing her work was helping others. My own healing process included joining a support group for parents of children who had experienced trauma. Sitting in a circle with other mothers and fathers whose children had been hurt in various ways, some by family members, others by strangers or accidents or illness, I found comfort in shared understanding. "The guilt is the hardest part," I admitted during one session. "I keep thinking I should have known better than to leave Sophia with Margaret despite all the red flags." The group facilitator, a kind-eyed woman named Teresa, nodded. "That's very common, but remember, you made the best decision you could with the information you had at the time. The person responsible for hurting Sophia is Margaret, not you. Logically, I knew this was true. Emotionally, it took much longer to believe it. I began seeing my own therapist working through the complicated feelings of guilt, rage, and fear that surfaced regularly. You're modeling resilience for Sophia, my therapist reminded me. By taking care of your own mental health, you're showing her that healing is possible and important. Daniel underwent his own transformation during this time. The shock of his mother's violence forced him to reevaluate his entire childhood and his relationship with both his parents. He began therapy unearthing painful memories he had suppressed for decades. My father knew. He told me one day after picking up Sophia for their weekend visit. He never stopped her, just tried to minimize the damage afterward. When I was 10, she threw a vase at my head for spilling milk. It missed, but when it shattered, a piece cut my cheek. Dad told the ER doctor I fell while running in the house. Our co-parenting relationship evolved into something healthier than it had been even during our marriage. Daniel became more present, more engaged with Sophia's interests and needs. He attended therapy sessions with her when Dr. Nelson suggested family involvement, and he never missed a school event or medical appointment. I failed her once by not seeing who my mother really was, he told me. I won't fail her again. The community around us proved invaluable in our healing journey. Mrs. Parker, the neighbor who had helped Sophia and called the police, became a regular visitor and occasional babysitter. Her husband James, who had intervened during the attack, taught Sophia woodworking in his garage workshop, patiently showing her how to create simple projects that built her confidence. My colleagues at the hospital arranged meal deliveries during the first difficult weeks and covered extra shifts when I needed time off for Sophia's appointments. Sophia's teachers created a supportive environment at school, allowing her to step out of class when feeling overwhelmed and checking in regularly about her well-being. 6 months after the attack, we received an unexpected letter from Margaret. It had been screened by her prison psychologist and Jessica before reaching us, deemed appropriate, for Sophia to read if she chose to. The envelope sat on our kitchen counter for 3 days before Sophia decided she was ready. "Do you want to read it alone, or should we read it together?" I asked her. "Together," she said firmly, "but I might not want to finish it." "That's absolutely fine," I assured her. "We can stop whenever you want." The letter was handwritten on prison stationery, Margaret's usually perfect penmanship, now shaky and uneven. "Dear Sophia," it began, "I am writing to apologize for the terrible harm I caused you. There is no excuse for what I did. In my therapy sessions here, I am beginning to understand that I have serious issues with anger and control that go back to my own childhood. This doesn't justify my actions, but I want you to know that what happened wasn't because of anything you did wrong. You are a wonderful, talented girl who deserves love and safety, not fear and pain. I am truly sorry for hurting you, and I understand if you never want to see or speak to me again. Your grandmother, Margaret." Sophia was quiet after I finished reading. "Do you think she means it?" she finally asked. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "People can change if they truly want to and work hard at it. But what matters most is that you know she was wrong and none of what happened was your fault." Sophia nodded, then asked me to put the letter away. "I'm not ready to forgive her. Maybe someday, but not now." "That's completely okay," I told her. "Forgiveness is your choice, and there's no timeline for it. You don't owe her anything." As Margaret served her sentence, Richard, her brother who had testified about her history of violence, became an unexpected ally, an extended family member for Sophia. Unlike Margaret, Richard was kind, patient, and genuinely interested in Sophia's art and ideas. He had no children of his own, but turned out to have a natural gift for relating to them. "Uncle Richard doesn't talk to me like I'm stupid," Sophia observed after he took her to an art exhibition. "He asks what I think and really listens." Through Richard, Sophia gained insight into Margaret's background without the burden of direct contact. He shared carefully selected stories about their childhood, helping Sophia understand that Margaret's cruelty had roots in generational trauma. "Our grandfather was a violent man," Richard explained to me privately, "and our mother looked the other way. Margaret learned early that power came from instilling fear and weakness was punished. I'm not excusing what she did to Sophia, but there's a context that might help Sophia make sense of it someday." A year after the attack, we held a small ceremony in our backyard that Sophia called her healing celebration. Her idea was to mark how far she had come, rather than dwelling on the trauma itself. She invited the people who had supported her, Dr. Nelson, the Parker's Uncle Richard, her favorite teachers and close friends, who had stood by her through the difficult times. Sophia had created artwork for each guest, personalized pieces, expressing her gratitude for their specific role in her recovery. For Mrs. Parker, a watercolor of an open door symbolizing safety. For Dr. Nelson, a vibrant abstract representing emotional growth. For Daniel, a father-daughter portrait filled with light. "I couldn't control what happened to me," Sophia said, standing before our gathered friends with remarkable poise for a 13-year-old. "But I can control how I move forward. I'm not just a victim. I'm an artist, a friend, a daughter, and a survivor." There wasn't a dry eye in the garden as she finished speaking. Daniel, standing beside me, squeezed my hand gently. "She's extraordinary," he whispered. "And so are you, Juliana. I don't think I ever told you that enough." Later that evening, after the guests had gone and Sophia was asleep, I sat alone in our backyard, looking at the stars. The past year had been the most challenging of my life, but also transformative in ways I never could have anticipated. I had learned about my own strength and resilience. I had discovered the depth of community that surrounds us when we're vulnerable enough to accept help. I had witnessed the remarkable capacity of a child to heal from profound trauma with the right support. Most importantly, I had learned that protecting our children sometimes means fighting battles we never expected to face, even against family members who should have been sources of love and safety. The road ahead would still have difficult moments. Sophia might face triggers or setbacks as she grew older and processed her trauma from new perspectives. Margaret would eventually be released from prison, though the restraining order and ankle monitor would keep her at a distance. We would continue to navigate complex family dynamics and emotional recovery for years to come. But sitting there under the stars, I felt a profound sense of peace that had eluded me since the day I received that terrifying midnight phone call. We had faced the worst and survived. We had held a perpetrator accountable despite family pressure to stay silent. We had created new boundaries and new definitions of family based on love and respect rather than obligation or blood ties. And Sophia, my brave, resilient, compassionate daughter, was thriving not despite her trauma, but in part because of how she had chosen to transform it into wisdom and empathy. She would carry her experience forever, but it would not define or limit her. Instead, it had revealed her incredible strength and sparked a passion for helping others that might shape her entire life's path. As I headed inside to check on her before going to bed myself, I thought about the lessons we had both learned from this painful chapter of our lives, that sometimes the greatest danger comes from those who should love us most, that speaking truth even when it's difficult is essential for healing, that forgiveness is a personal choice with no timeline, not an obligation we owe to those who hurt us. And most importantly, that with love, support, and courage, we can rebuild safety and trust even after they've been shattered. I paused in Sophia's doorway, watching her peaceful sleep. The moonlight illuminated her face, relaxed and untroubled by nightmares for the first time in months. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, we would face them together stronger for having weathered the storm. Have you ever had to protect a child from someone who should have been trustworthy? What do you think about Margaret's letter of apology? Genuine remorse or manipulation? I hope this story helps anyone going through similar family trauma know they're not alone. Please like, subscribe, and share if this resonated with you. And remember that speaking up about abuse is never wrong, even when the abuser is family. Thank you for listening to our journey, and may you find the strength to protect yourself and those you love from harm, no matter its source.